Thank you, everyone. We just completed roll call, and every member of the full board authority at the Niagara Conservation Peninsula Authority is present. So I would like to now call the meeting to order. The Niagara Peninsula watershed is located on traditional territory of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. We want to show our respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Ontario. So welcome, as I said before, this is our last meeting of the NPCA full board of directors for 2020. Just to let you know that we will be taking an informal poll from all the members for your availability for 2021. And it may look like it would be a Monday or a Friday, we're not too sure. And as always, when we vote, I will ask who's in opposition for efficiency purposes. And I will also remind you all that I will do my best to maintain quorum, and I'm going to ask you the same. Please go through the chair, and we will try to use everyone's official titles. So I think we're moving on now to the approval of the agenda. So I'm going to ask Vice Chair McKenzie, seconded by Member Rapley, to approve the approval of the agenda. Are there any opposition? Seeing none, it is now moved. And just to give everybody a bit of a heads up, it's a very full agenda because last month we spent it on training as per our Auditor General's report. So now we need to pack this all in, and I apologize for that, but we're going to hope to get through this quickly. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, thank you. And I am now going to ask Member Smith, seconded by Member Steele, that we approve the minutes for the full board authority meeting dated November the 19th, as well as the closed session minutes that were dated November the 19th. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. Correspondence, there are none. This is where the Port Colborne correspondence should have been put in, and it's my apologies, that was a glitch, but it has now been sent to the appropriate committee. So we're on to presentations, please. We have a PowerPoint presentation from Steve Miller, who is the Senior Manager of Water Resources. This is the November 15, 2020 Lake Erie Storm Surge Summary. Thank you. So I'm going to call on our Senior Manager of Water Resources, please. Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I've been asked, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I've been asked to give you a short presentation on the storm event that smashed into the Lake Erie shoreline middle of November. I'll keep it brief. I know we have a full agenda. We wanted to give this presentation because this was the highest the lake surged since the benchmark big storm of December 1985. So Gina, if we can, we'll let you get set up. And once you're set up, if you can advance the slide time.
I'm not sure if everybody's seeing what I am seeing.
It's just okay, we have it up on screen. Gina, can you kindly advance the slide? Gina, can you maximize it? I'm only seeing part of the screen. Okay, thanks, Gina. So this storm event hit its peak intensity on Sunday night around supper time. The Conservation Authority knew we were expecting something big Saturday morning. Just after lunch, we issued a flood watch. The forecast from both MNR and NOAA anticipated a 6-foot storm surge with 6-foot waves on top of that. At the beginning of the storm event, Lake Erie is already 2 feet above its average level. We kept watching what was unfolding, and Sunday morning, we knew that for certain something big was going to happen. We upgraded the flood watch to a flood warning, issued the appropriate emails, sent out the alerts on our alertable mobile app, confirming 6-foot surge, 6.5-foot surge with 6-foot waves on top of that. And the MNR and NOAA forecasts were correct. It peaked shortly after dinner time. At the end of the day, Fort Erie, being at the easternmost part of the lake, seeing a 7-foot lake surge, 6-foot waves on top of that. And again, we start 2 feet above the average lake level. Next slide, please, Gina. Okay, why is this significant? We can see this is a record of the most severe storm surge events that we've had. The benchmark, the highest, is the December 1985 event. The lake at Port Colborne rose to an elevation of 176.6. In November 15th, we were just shy of that, 176.54, just a couple inches below that. So this storm event was greater than the Halloween storm event of 2019. So that's just to put it in context. Next slide, please, Gina. We're going to roll through some of the photos. So what did we see? We've seen flooding. Flooding up and down the shoreline. Here we're Haldeman, Lowbanks, North Shore Boulevard. Flooding. Next slide, please. Port Colborne, H.H. Knoll Park. Take a look at this slide on the left. You see the debris, the woody debris on top of the bench. That's how high the water got. Again, Point Avenue, that was flooded on out. We see remnants of that as we scuttered around. Next slide, please, Gina. Okay, Shirks and Shores, Port Colborne. The the trailers that were close to the lake were simply smashed. This is just a sample of what actually happened. Next slide, please. Let's take for a second to digest the picture on the top right. Waterfront Park, Crystal Beach. Soccer-sized rocks the lake had thrown up and littered the grounds. We've seen Lowbanks Cemetery again, hit again, softball-sized cobbles knocking over the headstones, and we've seen this occurrence again, Wainfleet as an example. Next slide, please. Erosion. For the shore protection that failed, the lake was simply clawed back. It's incredible. The picture on the left, we see this person's yard eroded completely back to the foundation. Picture on the right, shore protection for those that don't have a splash pad or a concrete pad behind them. The waves overtopped, eroded out the lands behind them. In some cases, pulled the shore protection into the lake. Next slide, please. This photo says it all. Next slide, please. Again, massive, massive erosion as a result of this event. Next slide, please. Dynamic beach. Dynamic beach is just a concept, but until you see it, it's tough to imagine. Casey Drain, Wainfleet, picture left before the storm, right after the storm. We've got 3 to 4 feet of cobble and sand that were just thrown up. You can see the picture before and after the storm. Amazing stuff. Next slide, please. Okay, Wainfleet, Reeves Bay. This is a drain that when we pump out our quarry, the Wainfleet quarry flows beside the in the roadside ditch and drains out to the lake. The township had an excavator out there digging 4 to 5 feet down. So the bottom right photo, I'm standing lake to my back. There's typically a drain, a little water course just shooting through there. After the storm, there wasn't any. Wild stuff. Next slide, please. And that's the end of the presentation. Short and sweet. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Steve. Gina, can you take the presentation down, please? And folks, if you want to speak during the presentation, feel free to use the chat component of this program, and I can add you to the list. Member Fior, question, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Steve, for the presentation, for sharing those images. I know I recorded some in Crystal Beach. It's quite devastating to see. I'm wondering if you've been able to gather any information from municipalities and homeowners about the cost that they incur as a result of these extreme weather events.
Great. Through you, Madam Chair. Well, thanks for the question. We coordinate closely with our municipal counterparts. So we've got an idea as to what some of the costs the municipality has experienced, and we're continuing to collect that data. As for the private homeowners, no, we don't have any comprehensive list as to what each individual landowner along the lakeshore has incurred.
Member Fior?
Okay, thank you. No, it's great to hear that you are collecting that data, and hopefully we can start to share that data to be able to express not only is this, devastating and dangerous from a physical perspective, but the actual cost impact that it's having on our municipalities when we have to do cleanup and repair and restoration work. So thank you for keeping on that.
Thank you. Member Smith.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. I'm just wondering, I remember that I'm going to say some months ago, we had a presentation, we had information from Wainfleet on the proposed development along the Lake Erie shoreline there. If I remember correctly, the permit was expiring in December. So my question is this, because I remember the residents were saying that the flood lines were very problematic. I'm wondering if there's an update on that, and is that permit still open? And I know I've caught you with something you're not prepared for. This thought just popped into my head, so maybe you need to, maybe that's an offline after this meeting.
Thank you. Senior Manager Miller.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to answer the question in two parts. The planning part, I'm going to defer to our Senior Manager of Planning. But what I can tell you, even though this storm was very intense, the Conservation Authority has mapped the Great Lakes shoreline hazards. So we know how high the lake gets during the 100-year event. We know how far back the waves are expected to impact. We know the limit of shoreline recession. Okay, all that's mapped. And I can tell you that this storm did exactly what we expected it to do. There are no surprises. We knew how high the water level is anticipated to get during the 100-year storm event. It didn't get that high. Okay, we know the extent of the wave uprush. So all those hazards are mapped. Now, I can tell you when it comes to development along the shoreline, okay, whether it's Lakewood or whatever, we know the extent of that hazard. A storm event like we had November 15th confirmed the accuracy of that information. And when we look to approve any development along the lakeshore, we require that the developer or the applicant confirm that those Great Lakes hazards can be mitigated, can be adequately mitigated. Okay, so that's setting the stage. Unfortunately, Member Smith, I haven't been involved recently in the that particular application. I'm going to have to defer that to someone.
I get it. I'll follow up with a question after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Member Woodhouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems to me that I was out at looking at the shoreline myself, and it seems to me this is becoming more frequent of an environment or of an event than in the past. And I think with the global changes that are occurring, it's going to become more normal than not. And with that in mind, and with that understanding, is there and this, I guess, gets to a much bigger picture than us here, just in our authority. But it seems to me that this is a much bigger issue than we're able to deal with, and it calls into question the whole issue of setbacks on water courses. I know down in the States they're actually buying up some of these places and tearing them down because of raising water levels and the impact that they have when they have a surge and storm conditions. And I'm not sure what my question would be. I'm just befuddled as to it seems like a lack of coordinated effort to understand the magnitude that this is having and the damage that it creates. And yet we continue to go and build on water courses and exasperate the problem. I just, if you could comment on that, Steve, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senior Manager?
Through you, Madam Chair. It is indeed an issue. Part of the reason we're seeing these aggravated events is because Lake Erie is indeed up. It's high, 2 feet higher than it typically is. 95% of the water in Lake Erie comes from the upper Great Lakes. And right now, Superior, Michigan, and Huron, their levels are indeed high. So we can expect high water in Lake Erie for the next couple of years. That tends to aggravate these storm surge events. Would we see the damage that we've seen if Lake Erie was at its typical level? Probably not. Now, all that aside, what do we do about it? One of the difficulties is much of the Lake Erie shoreline is in private ownership. Okay, there are very few spots that have long tracts of land in public ownership, much like we see up Lake Huron. So we try and deal with it. We're left to deal with it one lot at a time, one landowner at a time. When folks come and look to rebuild an old piece of shore protection, an old crunky piece that was damaged by the storm, we have our Lake Erie, Lake Ontario shoreline management plans to guide us. We advise folks of the most appropriate kind of protection to put in, one that will withstand these kinds of storm events. And we work, every lot is different, every landowner's situation is different. So we try and provide the best technical advice that we can to help folks rebuild or protect their property. This is in the absence of a comprehensive shoreline strategy, which I know the Conservation Authority has on its radar to take. I hope that answers your question.
Member Woodhouse?
Well, I guess it really confirms my frustration with this whole matter in that, we're advising people on what to do and in the best way we can, but it seems to be a much bigger issue than us. And I'm wondering if it's something we should pursue, Madam Chair, as taking a view to upper level governments. Because it seems to me that, we have the Great Lakes Association, which all the mayors are participating in if they're on the shorelines. I know I've heard of that. I've sat on it actually years ago when I was mayor. So it's a way to start. But when you're talking international things, I mean, it really involves the federal government and in part the Ontario government. Municipalities are kind of down the line receiving the brunt of all of these things, and the individuals that are there, they want to enjoy the water. Obviously, they wouldn't be there otherwise, and yet at the same time, we're creating more opportunity for disaster, and even worse as this condition changes with the environment. So I just throw that out to the board as a way of expressing my frustration, number one, but also suggesting that maybe we should be doing something to express our concerns with upper levels of government. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Woodhouse. I don't see any other questions. Oh, sorry, Member Cridlin, and then I have Member Shurton. Go ahead, Member Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to staff. All on a slightly different perspective of it, I know this generates unplanned staff work, obviously, that is a little bit predictable, but from the permit issuing side, did the NPCA have what it needed in resources to respond to the urgency and the obviously the seriousness of what homeowners were facing, where the NPCA did have a role? So perhaps you could just comment. And I heard absolutely no complaints. So if there were things that we do need to know about and address for these planned events virtually now, maybe you could just comment briefly on that. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Member Cridlin. Senior Manager?
Through you, Madam Chair. What I'll answer with my part, and I'll open it up if Darren, Director, or David, Senior Manager of Planning and Permits, want to add. What I can tell you is, yes, there was we've seen a ton of permits coming in for rebuilds. I provide the technical review. So anytime you work in a regulated area like Great Lakes Shoreline, permit is required from the Conservation Authority. We've been talking to a heck of a lot of people, helping them, guiding them in the right direction in terms of the proper or the preferred method to help protect the shoreline. Our staff here are fantastic. We've had an avalanche, and the permit people, the watershed planners, they went above and beyond in terms of expediting the process, because they know folks, had were in a bind. The emergency ones they put through, really, I would commend them. You, as a board, should be proud of the work that these folks are doing.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, Member Cridlin, I'm just going to ask Darren McKenzie, Director of Watershed, if he wanted to add to that. We're seeing a lot more permits come in, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can everybody hear me? That's the first question with this.
Yes.
It's actually, my mic is actually working this time. We're good. No, and Steve hit the nail right on the head. Our staff has been excellent on getting these. Our direction is that we put forward is that if a permit is coming in that's impacting property, specifically primary residence or loss of life, anything like that, that's the priority. It takes precedent over anything else, because that's more anything. You need to get that property safe. You need to make sure that the people are safe, and you go from there. Things like that, we all jump in. If we're short-staffed, or staff are working on a whole bunch of other ones, I jump in to review. We have David will jump in. Jason Culp, the former supervisor for the permits, looking after compliance, he will jump in to help with the review. We make sure that all hands get on deck to look after these things. Because that is the most important thing, is making sure that people and property are safe.
Thank you. Member Cridlin, any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member Shurton did have his hand up, but I don't see him on video. Member Shurton, are you there? There. Oh.
I've been here all day, and I chatted it. So check your chat box. Anyways, as a Bruin fan, I'm going to totally disagree with Malcolm about needing extra help.
There goes decorum.
I went to a GRCA meeting, and they basically said the water levels go on 30 to 35-year cycles. And Steve did mention about 3 or 4 more years probably of high levels. So sometimes when you're on the lake, you got to expect that. But I do want to just comment on the permit process, because as you see by the pictures, Low Banks was hit pretty hard. And I know their staff is really good with anybody who wants to do a rebuild. The issue and the challenges is of what's required for a brand new break wall, an engineering report, yada, yada. At the end of the day, we got to find a way to sort of help these owners. I'm not saying waive this engineering fee, but at the end of the day, if they have nothing and they want to build something, a delay by getting an engineering report at the end of the day that in 5 years the waters could take it down anyway, why not let them build something that's going to be better than what if there's nothing there? So I know it's frustrated for some of the residents that have realized finally they need to get a break wall, and there seems to be more hurdles. I know it's much easier if you get to repair. And I do commend Darren, Chandra, and Dave, who I've emailed to, and they did expedite quite a few permit issues that were kind of outstanding. So congrats to that, and that's my comments.
Thank you, Member Shurton. I don't see any other questions for Senior Manager Miller. So I am going to ask now that we ask for Member Woodhouse, seconded by Member Shurton, to receive the presentation, and any opposed. Seeing none, thank you very much. Now we're on to the big hot topic, folks. This is 4B, and our CAO, Chandra Sharma, will present our Bill 229, the presentation. And afterwards, I will then call on Vice Chair Mackenzie to give an overview from Conservation Ontario conference last Monday, which I was unable to attend because that was heavily involved with the 229 as well. So, CAO Sean Sharma.
Chair Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Chair Johnson.
Yes, Member Kaywell.
The agenda said that this presentation was going to be provided under separate cover. Was it sent out to us?
I'm not sure. I didn't receive one, so I'm just going to ask CAO Shamra, did you send it out, or can we send it out as you speak?
Good morning, everyone. My apologies, Madam Chair, to you. The presentation was finished late last night. My apologies. We can send it out right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll ask Grant, who has a copy of the presentation. He can circulate to members while I'm speaking.
So, Executive Coordinator Bevo, sorry about that. I didn't get your proper heading before. Would you mind please sending out the presentation while we're looking at it? And CAO Sharma, can you please make this presentation larger on the screen?
Gina has the control. Gina, would you like me to take the control?
Yes, I'll put it just a moment.
And again, anybody have questions, please put it in the chat room. I'll put you down on the list and make sure that you are addressed before we finish closing this section off. Wonderful, thank you.
Right, thanks. So thank you, Chair Johnson. I want to start by thanking our community partners and municipalities for the support we have gotten over the last few weeks as this Bill 229 Budget Measures Act, Schedule 6 of the Act, which contained Conservation Authority amendments, unfolded. What I'm trying to do today is in the next few slides, I'll try and walk you through these changes. I will highlight some of the next steps as well as some priorities for NPCA for 2021. So as you know, the bill received Royal Assent on December 8th. At that point, similar to previous Bill 108 in 2019, most of the clauses in the bill are still to be enacted at a future date once the regulations are developed, except for one, which is the municipal zoning order. Any clauses related to the municipal zoning order are in effect right now. In terms of NPCA response, briefly, we were very thorough and comprehensive. We worked closely with Chair Johnson, Vice Chair McKenzie, and Conservation Ontario process. Our response included thorough analysis of implication, clear articulation of requested changes, and advocacy support. A report was presented to the board at our November 19th meeting, highlighting our concerns and areas where we wanted these changes to happen. And it was followed by letters to our partners, MPPs, as well as written submissions to the standing committee. So as we all know, after the second reading, the bill was referred to the standing committee. At that point, the standing committee made line-by-line amendments to the bill. In terms of the amendments to Schedule 6, let me first start with the one to Section 40 of the Act. These changes relate to the program and services. As you are going through these slides with me, please note that the green text on the left details my preliminary analysis on our upcoming priorities and actions, and on the right, you'll see the changes in blue. So in terms of programs and services, the amendments have now removed the ability of the Lieutenant Governor and Council to make regulations scoping the types of non-mandatory services and programs of the Conservation Authority that we can provide. The mandatory programs and services are still going through proper regulation development in the coming weeks. Amendments also introduced a new regulation making authority governing budget measures. So now these will include the process authorities must follow when preparing a budget and the consultations that are required, and providing for rules and procedures governing meetings and voting on budget matters. Governance was the major area where we had a lot of concerns, and most conservation authorities did, and there were a lot of amendments that happened to this section. As you can see from this slide, the first one was related to the duty of members under Section 14. It has been amended now, so members, the line has been added that members further the object of the authority. They have now left it to read as members are expected to act in the best interest of both their appointing municipalities and the Conservation Authority. The term of municipal councillors, the term municipal councillors has been replaced with members of the council. And this was the problem we had identified. Now mayors can also participate on Conservation Authority boards. So that corrects that problem. In terms of the membership, the 100% council appointed members has been changed to 70-30 now. So there is a requirement for 70% of the members to be appointed from the council, and other 30 could be from other areas. These are still, we're still needing further direction on the transition of these things. So for us, at least for the next round of NPCA board, it's status quo until we receive further direction on the timing of these governance related changes. So the next one is that the provision minister has also allowed for exemptions from this requirement at the request of municipality. So if a municipality is finding it very difficult to appoint 70% of their members to a Conservation Authority board, they can write to the minister and they can be allowed to have some exemptions there. The changes to the agriculture representatives have not been made. They are as they were, but basically what has been added there is that they cannot vote on enlarging, amalgamating, or dissolving a conservation authority or on any budgetary matter. Again, further on governance, they have also added a provision to allow the minister to grant exemptions to the requirement of rotation of chair and vice chair amongst participating municipality. If you recall, there was a provision there. So that has changed. Municipalities can write and ask for that exemption. And then there's another exemption that has been facilitated regarding the appointment of chair and vice chair for a one-year term, or for no more than 2 years. That was the limitation there, so that municipalities can write and get that change. Now, they've also added something in there to make sure that the ministry will ensure that these governance changes are facilitated through proper direction on what training is required or not. I do think that these changes to the governance and other areas will require our administrative bylaw to change again. I know you've just approved it this year. So as one of the priorities for the coming year in 2021, we will have to, our governance committee need to look at all these changes. We'll work with them, and the administrative bylaw needs to be changed for future years. In terms of compliance and enforcement, the first item was a big one for us, where we asked to retain the clause that would enable us to issue stop work orders. The concern was addressed in that the province didn't repeal this clause because it's still, but it's still to be enacted as part of the regulations. So what they've done though is they've added conditions around its use. They've also added the ability of the person engaged in illegal activity to appeal the stop work order. And we were also looking for improvements to warrantless entry clauses, and these were not addressed at this point. So there's no provision for entering a property for the purpose of inspecting current permit. There is a provision that has been added that only the enforcement officer can enter the property, and other experts cannot go with the enforcement officer. We are working closely with Conservation Ontario to facilitate further regulations around this. And what we will need to do after it's all said and done, we'll need to train our staff, our enforcement staff, on these changes. Planning and permitting is an area where some new additions have been made at the standing committee level. So what has now been added is a requirement of the Conservation Authority to issue a permit if a zoning order has been issued and it is outside the greenbelt. So now CAs can apply for conditions. We will conditions for permit, but we cannot refuse a permit, and the conditions cannot conflict with the intent of the minister's zoning order. The applicant can still go through the appeal process if they do not like the conditions attached to the permit. However, basically, we are at the mercy of the minister at this point on this one. Now, all the clauses related to the minister's zoning order come into effect immediately, as I said before. In terms of CA, there's another one, sorry. There's another one here where CAs are also required to enter into agreements with the developer to compensate for ecological impacts or any other impacts that may result from the development of that project. Further on permitting, these were the changes that were there originally, and there have been no amendment made. So minister can still order a CA to not issue a permit, and instead the minister can issue. They have the power to issue the permit. Appeals will still go through the Planning Appeal Tribunal, and to the minister for review. So that's the two-tier process they have introduced. If you're aware that originally our board acts as an appeal body, and if the matter is not resolved here, it can be appealed to the Mining and Lands Commission. But now a Mining and Lands Commission has been taken out of question, and right now it's the two-tier system where the appeal can either go to the Planning and Appeal LPAT or the minister. Now, there have been some new conditions added to the permits in terms of fines. The standing committee also added that the first the first condition that has been added is including an increased fine of $50,000 for an individual and $1 million for a corporation for contravening the conditions of a mandatory permit, which is issued under a municipal zoning order. The other clause relates to an offense for contravening a stop work order, and this is for conservation authorities. In terms of appeals, with the amendments, CAs will still be able to appeal planning applications on natural hazard issues. So where our interest is on the natural natural hazard side of things, we can still be a body to appeal on that basis. As landowners, the province has made some or limited amendments to that section where they have enabled conservation authorities to appeal a decision on a consent application made by a conservation authority to create a new lot on our own property. And that's the only way or on that issue that we can participate in that appeal process for our lands. So for us now, we will work with Conservation Ontario to provide input to these regulations and update our policies and plans accordingly with the watershed lens as these progress. So what's coming next? The province, in terms of regulations, the Ministry of Conservation, Environment Conservation and Parks will move forward with consultations on this. The first phase will include mandatory programs and services of Conservation Authority. And the second phase will include regulations around levy and budgetary matters. A transition period will be established for Conservation Authority and municipalities to enter into agreements with for municipal funding on non-mandatory programs and services. During this transition period, CAs will also be asked to develop and implement transition plans on all these mandatory programs and services, non-mandatory, sorry. I have a feeling, and I think this is what we've been told, that the timing on this is by the end of 2021. So for to be ready for 2022 budgets, we will have to do a lot of work on this over the course of the second half of next year, because that's the time we are finalizing our budgets and presenting those budgets to municipalities around October, November. And that's when we need to have everything finalized for next year budgets. So further on next step, 2021 will be another busy year for us. What the province is doing in terms of developing these regulations, some board members have asked me, this was discussed at the Conservation Ontario table on Monday. The province has announced the appointment of an advisory committee with the CA Conservation Authority representative right now. Hassan Bish is being appointed as the chair of that committee, and it's a provincial appointment, and they will pick other members of that committee. What we are also expecting, and we will push through the committee, is a draft schedule of enactment of governance-related clauses. So we have a pretty good idea of when those governance-related changes need to be introduced, by when. And this will be important for us because municipal elections are coming in 2 years. If we make any changes to our boards next year, It will be very difficult for our municipal partners to do it twice in the next 2 years. So some direction, we will be asking the province to provide some direction on that, the timing of those. Conservation Ontario has also requested that we be allowed for a longer period for consultations on this. It is going to be 30 days, but we've asked for, Conservation Ontario is asking for 60 days. Now, Conservation Ontario also passed a motion regarding municipal zoning order and permits related to that. Basically, the intent of that motion was to indemnify for permit decision Conservation Authority staff, because now you'll be forced to issue permit on some of those matters. That motion will come to the board when it's formally circulated to NPCA. Now, we welcome this establishment of this working group. More details are yet to come. And I think all conservation authorities are looking forward to working with this working group to make sure that CA's science-based watershed approach is addressed through those mandatory programs. What do we need to do now? With this moving forward, we need to update, we are updating our policies and procedures, so the timing is okay for us for next year. We will make changes where needed. We will have to update our administrative bylaws regarding governance-related requirements. I will do some thinking with the committee this afternoon, and over the next few weeks, we need to set broad parameters to assist us with the strategic plan process in 2021. We have enough information here that we can launch a process and see what can be done, and taking a more flexible approach to be able to adjust things as needed towards the end of next year or before the launch of the strat plan. We also need to work on 2021 program alignment to find the right categories of mandatory and non-mandatory programs. And there will be many budget discussions with our 3 municipal partners to facilitate this over the next year. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions right now, and our planning staff are with us, and they'll help me answer any questions. Gina, I will now come out of sharing this screen.
I think you are sharing it, CAO.
Yes.
So I think you need to take it down.
Yeah, I'm stopping.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. And folks, just to let you know, as CAO Sharma said just a while ago, she was up very, very late doing this presentation. I want to thank both CAO and the staff for going through these changes line by line to provide this presentation for us today. I have a speakers list ready. It's Member Shurton, then Member Brady. If you have any more, go onto the chat or give a wave. And if I put my thumb up, I found you. So I am... And Member Smith, thank you. So we'll start with Member Shurton, please.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. I apologize. I did have in last for the chat button, but for some reason it didn't get sent to you. So I do apologize when you didn't recognize me. My question, I know the media was giving the conservation's concerns. I really did hear what the rationale was, why the government chose to make changes. I don't know if Sandra, who was maybe involved in more of these meetings, can maybe address that. So that's my one question. And I guess after that, I have a second follow-up, but I'll wait to see what staff says about why they think this was necessary to make these changes.
So through you, Madam Chair, I can answer that question. The process of Conservation Authority Act review was initiated way back in 2016, 2017, if you recall, by the previous government. It was a very extensive process. There was some confusion on many things outside in the community, and we all agreed that that needed to be addressed. So there was a full year of consultation with the community, the updated Conservation Authority Act was passed, and some sections, some changes were proclaimed. So if you look at the new administrative bylaws and all those changes, they came out of that. Streamlining, better customer services. So Conservation Ontario was working with Ministry of Natural Resources on facilitating those changes. When the new government came in, they made an effort to take some action on the unproclaimed sections of the Act. So if you remember, Bill 108 that came out in 2019 did speak to taking a look at the Conservation Authority Act, and we were anticipating that those sections of the Act that still need more work on regulations will be proclaimed through Bill 108. But somewhere in the process from 2019 June, I believe, when Bill 108 was, those changes were announced on mandatory, non-mandatory services where the province came up and described what mandatory services they think should be addressed, by Conservation Authority. That was in 2019. So we were hoping that following that 2019 June announcement, we will be working with the province on developing further guidance on municipal levy, mandatory, non-mandatory services, and other areas of the regulations. What ended up happening, it's not clear to us through this Bill 229 and Schedule 6 is more changes than that were anticipated. So we were only hoping regulations, but I think the government decided to make some legislative changes as well, and that's what we are dealing with right now. But you also recall there were extensive consultations. Some of us attended. Myself, Member Woodhouse, and Chair Johnson and Vice Chair McKenzie attended a session in London. So there were 3 stakeholder sessions earlier in 2020, so when the province was consulting. And I recall Association of Municipalities of Ontario at that one of those consultations making a presentation and confirming that they do not want any wholesale changes to Conservation Authority. There is some tweaking that is required further through regulations that will help us all get better at what we do. So that's all I can say at this stage. I'm not clear on why it was introduced the way it was introduced under the Budget Measures Act.
Thank you. Member Shurton?
My follow-up question is, and I know this kind of does, I guess, directly impact our board, and I see Member Woodhouse commented on it a while back after the changes were announced. And I guess that's a work in progress about our membership for our board and 70% of who's going to stay on, who's not. Is that decided amongst the 3 municipalities? Or like, how is that decision made going forward? And it might be a little premature, but if you could try to answer that, that would be nice, because I know that directly impacts our board.
I think I can jump in here right now. Everybody that's on the board today is on here by appointment of their municipality. So it'll be up to the municipalities as to who sits on the board tomorrow. 70% are supposed to come from councillors and mayors, but there's a caveat in there as well. And 30% is from other, which I assume is private citizens. What we don't know is the timing on this. When does this have to take effect? Some things did say that had to take effect immediately, but this was very vague. This portion of the bill. So CAO Sharma, please jump in, but I think that about covers it.
You're right, Madam Chair. It's the decision of municipalities.
That's right.
Once we have more direction from the province, municipal councils and municipal staff will have to decide how they want to do it.
And as always, the NPCA is held hostage by the municipalities who comes on the boards. So it's going to stay that way going forward. Member Shurton, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Brady, you had a question?
Yes, I did. I had actually one brief statement. It was stated that there are no minister zoning orders in Niagara at the present time. I believe that's not true. There's an old, and you should be aware of this, Chandra. There's an old minister zoning order which impacts Point Abino. It was put in place a number of years ago, and it still continues to be in place. At least it was when I retired in March. So that minister zoning order is, if you will, logically based. It provides for a large section of Point Abino, which is privately owned, to continue to be maintained with no development. So I just wanted to point that out to you. There is one in place. It's old, and just so that we don't lose that perspective. Secondly, and it is a question, and that is when MOUs are being prepared for non-mandatory programs in Niagara, is it going to, are your negotiations going to be with the region, or is it going to be with the local municipalities, or both? I've been involved with MOUs in Niagara before, and certainly the local municipalities have always played a significant role. And you may not know this, the answer to this question yet, but it's something that I think you should consider and discuss with your municipal colleagues.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for bringing
Thank you, Member Brady. No, you just muted yourself again, sir. Okay, you're fine. Thank you. Member Smith, you're up next, and I don't have any other speakers. Please put in the chat room or wave if you want to ask a question. Member Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start with my conclusion on what just happened with Bill 229 and Schedule 6. And it's really just one sentence. I think really what's happened is we've transitioned conservation authorities from science-based to politically based organizations. Not to say that they weren't always politically based. I know we're not that naive, but we've really taken away the ability to make strong decisions based on science. And I believe we're deluding ourselves to somehow conclude otherwise. And so I think special actions are required here. So I'm going to suggest, like this advisory committee that the province has announced, I think we should be sending a letter saying we will not participate in the advisory committee. They have turned all of this political. They are trying to put icing on it by saying, look at what we're doing. We're being responsible. We're setting up this advisory committee. We want to hear from you. When all of us in our inside voices know that that's not true. We know the intention of what we've just gone through, and yet we're still going to play into all of that instead of taking a stand. And it doesn't have to be a shouting stand, but we can send a letter saying, even if we're not invited to that advisory committee, we want to participate in that advisory committee, which is just our government's attempt to legitimize what they just did to conservation authorities.
Okay. Sorry, did you? Hang on a second, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, Member Smith, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am, I sure am.
Thank you. And now we have Member Rapley.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that when Chandra started, all of a sudden everything disconnected here, and I finally got back in, but the video won't work.
Okay.
So I missed most of her presentation. I'll look at the written information. Yeah, this is, you know, it is a real devastating blow to NPCA and the role of conservation and environment in Ontario. And there are many things such as pollution monitoring. And, you know, if they're going to allow a lot more pollution and development impacts on all this sort of stuff, where do we stand on that? And how do we make sure that government, you know, that passed this takes responsibility when in fact many of the problems will show up, like Walkerton, long after these people are out of their positions in government. It's very sad, and I'm very totally disappointed with the whole thing. Let's see what happens, and we'll have to let it play out. And I just wanted to make that comment, but I'm back on voice only at this point. My video just has a frozen thing on it. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Member Rapley. Are there any other comments or questions for CAO Shamra? Oh, sorry. I have Member Fior. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. I have Member Kaywell, Member Fior, and Member Foster. Member Kaywell, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as I understand it, the minister can now order the Conservation Authority to issue permits, even if we had not wanted to do that ourselves. Assume for a second that happens, a property owner builds something, it floods, and they sue the Conservation Authority. Are board members now liable for that as part of that lawsuit?
I'm not sure. CAO Sharma? I don't know if you're not muted, ma'am.
I'm not muted, but I'm taking a minute. I'm taking a minute to figure out how to answer that question. A couple of things here. The first thing is our professional staff who issue the permit. So Conservation Ontario is trying to address that through that motion that I spoke about to indemnify Conservation Authority staff when we issue a permit. Somebody has to take the liability. In regards to permits issued, and it's another broader issue of who gets, you know, who is ultimately responsible, and those things will need to be worked out with the province as the regulations are being developed. It will be premature for me to say anything in public at this time on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I heard what you said about Conservation Authority's motion, but that only indemnifies the staff. I don't think it does anything to cover the board. So I think that's something we should investigate, because there may be a liability impact there to board members. That would be a concern. Chair, I also have a second question.
Go ahead.
That goes back to the membership process. Have we sent a letter to the three municipalities indicating that we would like to get resolution on the membership process as quickly as possible? Do they know that that's a priority now, those three participating municipalities?
I can't speak for Niagara, but I can tell you that Hamilton has this as a priority, because we also have other conservation authorities in our city. Also, we've been in tentative conversations with the region. But at this time, we were waiting for timelines to come down from the province first. And right now, as Sharma, CAO Sharma said earlier, that everything's going to stay status quo for 2021. So we would have 2021 to work it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Member Fiore, Member Foster, Member McKenzie, Member Clark, and Member Woodhouse. So Member Fiore.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll try my best to keep this brief. So from my understanding, this working group, there's a call out for this working group to better focus conservation authorities. I'm going to throw the link to the press release there in our chat. I hear what Member Smith is saying, and I understand that the voice has been at the table, and despite our voice and a collective voice, especially over the past several weeks, going to the table, these changes were still made. So sometimes it can be increasingly frustrating to speak and not be heard. However, I'm hoping that we can use momentum that's been built over the past several weeks to really engage not only our municipalities, but citizens conversation around conservation, to become more active in electing officials that are making science-based decisions around these matters. And how can we, yes, still sit at this table even if our voices aren't fully heard, but also sit around other tables with our community members to really get them actively engaged, because I think a lot of them fully understand that conservation matters, and that that conservation authorities play an important role.
Yes, Chair Johnson, would you still be wishing for me to speak about the CO Council after the question?
Actually, I think this would probably be appropriate to do this during this discussion so we can continue on. So if you want to give your perspective of what happened at the CO on Monday regarding Bill 229, I think it would be very appropriate.
Well, thank you very much. And following with our CAO, Sharma, her briefing was quite accurate and thorough. And I think all the members would agree that there is an incredible amount of detail that she covered. I've been trying to follow this closely for some time now, and I understood what our CAO was saying, but that's after a lot of study. So I do recommend the members to read what's being sent out or has been sent out, and to ask questions. This subject also is moving very, very quickly. The working group, the idea of it was announced at the Conservation Ontario Council on Monday by Minister Urick himself. He did attend for part of that meeting. His staff were there for most of it. And it caught the Conservation Ontario Council by somewhat of a surprise, because the minister has chosen to work with this working group, the chair of which is the CAO for the Halton Conservation Authority, Mr. Hassan Bassett, as our CAO has previously announced. The members of the other members of the working group have not been announced yet, and Member Fiore, I think, just pushed out the link to the government's announcement. Working with this group, I think, will be important. At the CO Council, it was discussed about the surprise of this working group being announced, rather than having the minister work through the the Conservation Ontario Council. And the decision was made to take advantage of this offer of working through the working group to try to allow conservation authorities an avenue or a doorway into providing input into making all these final decisions that are left right now hanging out there. We don't know, as our CEO has said, so many things, timelines, like for the changeover of the governance of our members, board members. At the CEO Council, that was my first time to attend that council. I was very impressed with the quality of the members being primarily, of course, the chairs and vice chairs and CAOs from across the province. Left with a tremendous amount of confidence in that council. There was grave concerns raised about the minister's zoning orders and what might happen with them. That's a topic that's going to be coming about, and you've probably all read that 7 members of the Green Belt Council have resigned recently in protest to this Schedule 6. They are on the outside now, though. I also wanted to mention, in your reading materials, you'll see that organization like the AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and the Professional Engineers of Ontario Association. They've all sent in strong letters about Schedule 6 and with questions about that. Conservation authorities are not alone. In answer to Member Smith's concern, the government is listening, I think, and if the citizens could give input to the government, this is the time for that. The working group has its own job to do, but the politics of it all will come down to the citizens group. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time allotted to me.
And thank you, Vice Chair, for attending on my behalf. I really appreciate that. So now we're on to Member Clark and then Member Woodhouse. Member Clark, please. Everybody else mute yourselves. Thank you. Go ahead, Member Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I opened up that link that was shared with us about the announcement about this working group. The quote from the minister is, "As we move forward together, we want to build a stronger relationship with conservation authorities so we can work together to ensure consistent best practices, good governance, and appropriate accountability to best serve the people of Ontario." That's an interesting political statement, because it's implying that we have not had best practices, good governance, or appropriate accountability, and yet conservation authorities across this province has been held up as examples of those very things by many, many people, except this government. So I find it a little bit duplicitous, and I find the changes that they have offered to assuage conservation authorities and citizens who are rightly outraged as nothing more than a sop. They're still getting exactly what they want with minor changes and saying, "Oh, look, we listened to you." So I'm not convinced that the government is wanting to work with conservation authorities as much as get the issue off the front page and let them do what they want to do. And that's a sincere opinion. I don't think conservation authorities have any choice but to work with this working group that they're setting up. But personally, I find it insulting that they set up a working group when we already have Conservation Ontario. So why is it that they didn't want to work with Conservation Ontario? Why did they need to have a special working group that's under their control as the government? In terms of appointing citizen members, I'm looking forward to the discussion at Council in Hamilton, because I have no intention of switching to politicians only. We have had excellent results from citizen members on the Hamilton Conservation Authority since its inception. It was citizens that fought for the conservation authorities and to create such entities and that it was a progressive conservative government that implemented it. So when it comes time to appointing people to conservation authorities, I'd have no problem appointing exactly who we want as citizens, as well as the elected members, and let the government make a move. Let them demonstrate to the courts why we shouldn't have citizen members. I think it's incredibly insulting what they have done. And it's not necessary. And they're picking a fight with people that they don't need to pick a fight with. So we have no choice but to work with the working group, because that's the way the government set it up. But conservation authorities should be standing their ground on the issues that are important to them. And they should not acquiesce to the government, and they should continue to push to ensure that the policies are changed to the way they should be. And if it takes 8 years to do it, so be it. But we should not back down. Conservation authorities were being well managed, well run. They were operating with accountability. They were operating in good governance and best practice. And they have helped the province of Ontario deal with the risk of floods and protect citizens and land. So I understand that the government is saying, here, we're listening, but with the greatest of respect, I've been there. I'm not sure they are. I think they're trying to assuage us. They want the issue off the front page. They had 45,000 emails come in. That's a huge number. So I'm not interested in rolling over. I'm interested in fighting for conservation authorities and making sure that we have the policies in place that can do what we're supposed to do, which is protect the land and protect the people and deal with the flooding issues and protect the wetlands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my final statement, these ministerial zoning orders, they have gutted a public process where we would have had hearings at the Conservation Authority on these issues, where it was clear that there was civic engagement and it's transparent and it's accountable. A minister's zoning order is the opposite of all of that. It is a draconian tool that gives all the authority to the minister and literally eliminates public discourse. So some will find that my comments are a little bit harsh. They are sincere. I'm not satisfied with the government's attempt to assuage the conservation authorities. And we have to continue to do what we can to fight to ensure that there is good policies that helps us do our job as conservation authorities. So those are my comments. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Member Clark. And I agree with Member Houston, who wrote into the chat. Well said. Member Woodhouse, please, and then we'll go to, I'm going to speak, and then we'll go to second-time speakers if there are any. I believe Member Smith is second time. Member Woodhouse, your first-time speaker, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Member Clark and his, I think, rather well-spoken observation of the reality. And just for the board's purpose of understanding where I'm coming from, I attended the workshop in London back in March, I think. Sharon, was it March? I think somewhere around there. And participated in those workshops with ministry staff. We were broken up into working groups. We made our comments and our thoughts about how to improve things from a conservation authority perspective. And these were conservation authorities from across the province that attended this. The minister got up and spoke after and was very glowing in his compliments of those of us who were participating and taking the time and giving them our sincere thoughts and ideas. Never once was this raised by him, other than to say that they were in concert with us, that this was a positive thing, that they wanted to make some small changes in order to assist us in being able to do the job that we've been entrusted to do by our councils and our public. And then they just arbitrarily go ahead and do this in spite of the fact that he basically lied to us. And for me, that's the toughest part of this whole thing for me. Aside from the power grab that I see it as, a political power grab to basically castrate conservation authorities. It's the fact that he stood there and lied to us. None of this was raised by their staff, by anybody from the ministry. Chairman Brenda, you were there as well as Sharma and I, and I can tell you, I don't recall any of this stuff coming up at that session. And they were holding, I think, across the province 3 of those meetings, if my memory serves me correct. And they were glowingly talking about how the positive aspect of the previous one that was held, it might have been in Kingston or maybe up even north. But anyway, it's the fact that they lied to us. And it's very obvious. I agree with Smith in that, it's pretty clear in terms of what their intent is here. But, we really have an option here. We could just say, well, we'll throw in the towel and we'll capitulate and we'll go along to get along. And I guess that flies in the face of who I really am as an individual. So my first intention is to fight what I perceive to be wrong. I perceive this to be very dishonest. It's very political. It's not based on science. It's based on appeasement of a certain element within our communities, and it flies in the face of our mandate. So having said all that, that's my view. I agree with Brad that we not take this lying down, that we have no choice but to participate in this process. But at the same time, our participation can be one of righting the wrong, and with the hopes that eventually this thing will be corrected and we'll get back to doing what we're elected here to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodhouse. Vice Chair McKenzie, can you please take the chair for a minute, please? I just want to make a comment. Again, thank you very much, CAO Sharma, for putting this all together for us. And again, thank you to Member McKenzie and CAO Sharma for attending on Monday. My comment is based on the working group, and it's ironic that they want to work with the conservation authorities after the fact. And I totally understand the frustration. But my concern is, if we all decide not to stay at the table, who would be left? It would be the non-conservation groups, while all of us stand outside shaking our fists at their windows. It doesn't make sense to me. We must be there to represent our membership, and that's my feeling on this. And maybe tongue-in-cheek remark would be, let's just send a couple of residents or a couple of citizen appointees from this board to go. Anyways, that was just a tongue-in-cheek. We will work that out later. But anyways, that was my concern. I don't want to leave the table empty for just those non-conservation groups to provide input. So there's my comment. I'll take the chair back. Vice Chair, thank you very much. And second time speaker, Member Smith. I don't see any others, and then we will receive. Oh, sorry, and Member Kaywell would like to ask a second question too. Go ahead, Member Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously I'd like to reinforce what Member Clark and some of the other comments that were made, but I think there's nobody, everybody has said we have to sit at the table, and I would disagree. I think I would put it this way, is if you know something's wrong, to sit at a table and sit with those people who are doing the wrong for no particular gain. There are other ways to affect the process. And when I think about the staff within our conservation authority, who many of them, I'm going to say probably most of them, are idealists towards what conservation authorities should be doing. And instead, right now, conservation authorities are being tossed around provincially as political ragdolls. I think we have actions that can be taken. And I believe that a conservation authority publishing a letter publicly that they will not attend these, whatever they're calling it, this advisory committee or these working groups. And as you said, Chair Johnson, thanks for the invitation after the fact. We're not going to participate in your attempt to legitimize this process and to swipe it off the front page. There is nothing that would be lost by us doing that. They can't affect us through funding. We would become champions for our own staff. We could become champions for environmentalism across Ontario. I just think the more that we play into the process, the more that we are identified as the process. And at some point we have to take, you can call it a parliamentarian objection. I'm not saying let's curse them out or anything like that. Let's put together a professionally worded letter and say, thanks for the invite, but we won't be there. Those are my thoughts. I think we owe it to the people inside the Conservation Authority. I think we owe it to all of the residents of this watershed. That's it. That was my comment.
I'm sorry, I was writing to Member Shirt, and he already informed us that he had to leave this morning. So I'm just wishing him a Merry Christmas and goodbye. So now we have Member Kaywall, and then we're going to wrap this up, please, because it's now 11 o'clock and we have a full agenda still ahead of us. Member Kaywall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I just want to follow up on Member Foster's comment about this not yet hitting the agenda of Niagara Regional Council. And I know that the comments have been made, but we'll wait to see what transitional timeframes come through. The bill has been passed. The membership guidelines are clear in the bill. I really doubt there's going to be further anything coming down with respect to the transition. So I know we have 4 Niagara Regional Councillors on this board. I would ask you to please, with some urgency, get that on the agenda of Niagara Regional Council. There are 11 citizens appointed from Niagara, and I'll speak personally. Being in a position of limbo is not a very pleasant position. So the sooner that could be clarified for us, that would be very appreciated. So thank you very much.
Yep, well said. Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're just going to now receive the presentation of both CIO Sharma's and Vice Chair McKenzie's, and it's moved by Member Wright, second by Member Metcalf, that we receive the presentation. All good comments coming forward. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now we're moving on, please. And I lost my mouse. Okay, so now we're on to consent items. No, there's no delegations today. So 6A, report number FA 6220, the Joint Agency Review Team. This is the JART process for information. If you have any questions, David Deleuze, who is the Senior Manager of Planning and Regulations, is here to answer any questions. Would you like to hear from David Deleuze, or are we okay just to consent to receive? Member Brady, I'll take your advice.
I have one question.
Okay.
More a statement than the question at the end. I read the information on the JART, and it's clear to me that the role of the Conservation Authority is to play on the JART is a technical review function, but there's no regulatory function in this. So I think it's important that the members of the board understand that, because this issue that the JART is involved with will become very, very controversial in the municipality that I represent. It's a new quarry, and therefore the level of controversy is very high. There is a water course of some description that appears to go right down through the middle of what will become the quarry. It's not a particularly large water course, but there is a water course. In the past, the walkers have moved water course from one location to another location as part of an application to expand a quarry in a neighboring municipality. I'm hoping that the conservation staff movement of that water course as to the ecological impact that there was or was not of doing so. So we have an example, if you will, of a water course. We can't see how this quarry can possibly be built without this water course being moved or removed, as the case may be. And we have a Legion of Niagara, who will be the people who make the decision on this quarry as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question in there? I heard the regulatory question.
Please confirm that there is no regulatory responsibility for the Conservation Authority.
Okay, thank you. David, did you want to answer that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Brady is correct. The Conservation Authority.
City View. Darren McKenzie, who's Director of Watershed Management, is here to do a presentation for us, and we will approve or not approve it at the end. Thank you. Director, are you ready?
To you, Chair. Actually, I do apologize. I did not know I was doing a presentation on this.
No, you don't need to. If you feel that it's, I'll ask the membership. No, we're good. I'll ask the membership.
Okay. The only thing I can say is that we're already using the City View application tracking software. We've had it in now since late 2017, mostly for our planning purposes. Becoming more familiar with the program and seeing the limitations that it currently has, the opportunities available to us to also do better for tracking permitting, compliance-related matters, and a host of other things, online submissions, online issuance. The software that we've been working with the Harris Group, where City View is from, they're the only ones that have this program. There's no other vendors available to purchase it from, and it will definitely improve not only our tracking, but our client services and speed in which we do reviews, and being able to consolidate things in a more of a localized fashion to be able to retrieve it by other staff.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or any concerns? Seeing none, then it's moved by Member Kuhn-Peterson, because we now know she's online, and seconded by Member Kewal to approve. Any objections, please? Seeing none, thank you. That's been moved. So now we're on to report number FA 6920. This is the contract award for Camas Incorporated. Adam Christie, Director of Operations, I will go to you first. If you want to say anything, calls, notes, please feel free.
Thank you, Chair. I'll mention that our current reservation system expired February of 2021. So to be ready for the new season, we went through an RFP process in November. We're pleased to announce that Camas was the winner of the new reservation system. We know this is a system that's used by several neighboring conservation authorities, and we look forward to working with them to launch this for the 2021 season.
Okay, thank you. So any questions or concerns? Member Cridlin, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. No concerns. With our upcoming year and probably being a little different than usual, will a software like this have the ability to measure surplus demand?
Thank you. Mr. Christie.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This software provides a lot of services that our current software did not. That would be one of them. It would help us with current reservations, a much more hands-on, being able to see the reservations and predict and possibly reserve for future days. It's a lot of things are included in this that we're excited about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, then it's moved by Vice Chair McKenzie, seconded by Member Rapley to approve. No oppositions. Any oppositions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We're on to report number FA 7120. This is the Virgil Dams National Disaster Mitigation Program application for approval. We need the approval of the board in order to apply for the National Disaster Mitigation Program. Steve Miller, Senior Manager of Water Resources, is here to answer any questions or concerns, or if you would like to give us an overview, Steve, feel free.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, the dam safety review that was undertaken by the Conservation Authority earlier this year identified some remedial works that need to be undertaken on the Virgil dams. Those remedial works were due to the fact that in 2011, the requirements, the rules, the guidelines for dams changed. Right now, that facility is deficient. An opportunity has come along in the National Disaster Mitigation Program to obtain up to 50% of the funding for those works. We have applied for it as part of a complete application. The Conservation Authority requires a letter of support from the municipality, and we've been in discussions with the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and they support the application. And the second thing that we need is a letter of support or a resolution from the Conservation Authority board saying that they support this project. So the application and those notices of support form a complete application. That's why we're here today.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Cradlin, I saw a question in the chat. Was that from the previous speaker, or would you like to ask one today? We're good? Okay, thank you. Member Vice Chair, please. Sorry, Vice Chair McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The question that I have here has to do with budgeting for this work. Assuming that we can obtain assistance from the federal government, as I understand it, we'll be on the hook for 50% of the project cost, which is could be in the area of $200,000, $250,000. This dam originally, if I remember correctly, was to assist with irrigation in the Niagara-on-the-Lake area. But now, because of upstream developments, this dam now also plays a role in flood control to benefit the lower parts of Niagara-on-the-Lake. And if my assumptions are correct, I'm wondering whether we may ask or identify to the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake that there's an opportunity for them to help to fund this project so that we can see it go ahead, seeing they're the benefiting municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair, if you could take the chair for a minute. I just have one quick question. Director, in Hamilton is levied a certain portionment of their budget to for the Binbrook Dam in Lake Nyapanko. Is there anything that's set up similar here for this type of dam or any of the other dams in any of the other municipalities that you know of?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, the Binbrook is unique in terms of that financial arrangement. What I can tell you is, in terms of financial implications, the money has been set aside in the 2021 capital budget to undertake these works. So yes, provisions have been made.
Thank you very much. Lise, can you just remind us how much the City of Hamilton is levied for the Binbrook Dam alone?
Through you, Chair, yes, certainly the actually we've changed the structure for 2021. Historically, $23,315 was issued as a special levy to the City of Hamilton for the repairs and maintenance on the Binbrook Dam. There was a case brought forward that the benefits accrue to the entire watershed and not specific to Hamilton, so that Binbrook R&M provision is now part of the general levy as opposed to a special levy to Hamilton. So there is no longer any component specific to the Binbrook Dam in the Hamilton levy.
Oh, thank you very much for that update. I really appreciate that. And I'll take the chair back. Thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any other questions before we approve? or vote to approve. Thank you. So it's moved by Member Smith, seconded by Member Steele to approve the Virgil Dam's National Disaster Mitigation Program application. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you very much. It's been moved, and now we're on to report number FA 6620. This is the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Planning Policy Update and Procedural Manual. This is to be approved, and please note this was a directive from our board. David Deleuze, Senior Manager of Planning and Regulations, is here to answer any questions or give us a brief overview. Good morning, Dave. Is it morning? Good, still morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, as you mentioned, the board has previously indicated to staff that they would like essentially a review of the NPCA's planning and permitting policies. And as well, we've also noted internally that we need to provide or produce a procedural manual to accompany those policies. So this report is essentially to request the board's endorsement of staff commencing that project. The project will span most of 2021 and will be divided into 4 phases as outlined in the report. And again, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Member K, while I see your chat, I would like to speak to item 8D. This is 7D, so I'm not sure where 8D is coming from.
Okay, it would be this item once it's been moved. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I right now have Member Woodhouse, seconded by Member Wright, to approve this. Are there any opposition? Seeing none, it's been moved. I will go now to Member Kaywell.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would like to speak in support of this motion. For the past 18 months, Member Smith and I have been advocating for a review of the NPCA policy document, so I'm pleased to see it's finally getting on the board agenda. Our efforts actually started in the summer of 2019 after the board approved the climate emergency, and we brought forward a request to review the green policies at that time. You may have recalled at our fixed authority meeting on December 2020, a board motion was tabled to review the policies for consistency with other conservation authorities and to bring forward any inconsistencies that had been identified. That motion was subsequently deferred. In February 2020, I put together a presentation to help raise the board's awareness with respect to the need for a policy review. And we were informed that the board had adopted a new policy prohibiting members from making presentations to the board. In May of 2020, at our fixed authority meeting, we had a very robust discussion on the proposed changes to section 8.2.3.5, which was about proposed new development within 30 meters of a wetland. And it was deferred subsequent to a review of all wetland policies. So I'm a little disappointed that the briefing note really makes no reference to these 2 significant board discussions for policy review. But board members were not the only ones who suggested a policy review. If you go back to 2018 and the Auditor General's report, she said specifically in recommendation number 9 that the NPCA needed to finalize as soon as possible its policies for reviewing development proposals for work permits. And she cited as rationale that the draft policy she had reviewed had incorporated more permissive policies under the interim directives at that time. This board's response to the AG's recommendation was that the policy review was completed with the issuance of that updated policy document in September 2018. The update incorporated those draft policies that she noted. The policy document was actually approved by the prior board on September 18, 2018, which is actually 8 days before the Auditor General released her report on September 27, 2018. I think in not choosing to undertake a policy review, this board has by default accepted the policies implemented by the prior board in September 2018. All of that, I think, is probably a moot point because the Auditor General in her follow-up report dated December 7, 2020, which is 10 days ago, noted that we found the new policy, i.e. the one implemented in 2018, regarding development near wetlands is more permissive than both 2017 policies and the 2013 interim directives, may be more permissive than the direction set out in the regulation under the Act. That appears to be a real call to action that the NPCA board must address. So I think it's absolutely incumbent on us, on the board, to make the policy review a priority. And I think to once and for all deal with the issue of the degree of permissiveness that we want in the NPCA policies. I fully support the motion. And since the NPCA has been operating under these more permissive policies for years, I wonder if the board can afford to wait another full year to complete the report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Kaywell, but I do believe I need to correct a few things. First of all, we cannot speak for what happened in 2018. We were not on the board at the time, but starting in 2019, I think we can all agree that it was a complete transition year. The staff have been dealing with multiple replacements on this board of directors to begin with, and at the same time struggling to complete the Auditor General's report. So in defense of the staff, I commend what they have done, and I fully support this going forward, and I'm glad to see it happening, and I am fully support of finishing off the Auditor General's recommendations, and this was just one check mark on a huge check mark. So David, to you and your staff, thank you so much for all your hard work. Anyways, so we have it right now. I believe it was Member Metcalf and moved by second by Member Shurton, who is back with us, to approve D, report number FA6620. Any opposition?
Chair Johnson, I did put in for a comment on this one.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I didn't, and I see that Member Brady also had had a brief question as well. My apologies, everyone. We haven't done the vote, so go ahead, Member Smith.
I'm going to support the motion also, and I think what I'd like to do just briefly is reiterate. I'll tell you what it feels like to me and to those green activists that I socialize with, that we have been fiddling around the perimeters while the heart is burning with the issues that we've been working on. That's not to take away from the good work that's been done, but we do exist because of the environment and the watershed. And it seems like it has taken us far too long, so that now, a year from now, we face the end of this green policy review. And I salute that. I'm glad that it's taking place. I'd be remiss to say, if I didn't say, we could have been on this 18 months ago. We could have been on this 18 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, and my comment still stands. Member Brady.
This is a brief question to Mr. Deleuze. David, I take it, I support the motion as well, but I take it that this review that you'll be doing of all the policies will be based on modern science. And I also take it that it will be brought to the planning directors in Niagara as part of the review, so that there won't be confusion as we move forward. Any comments, David?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Member Brady. Yes, there will be consultation with area planners, certainly in Niagara, as well as with the City of Hamilton, as well as Haldimand County, all of our watershed partners, because again, this isn't just a Niagara-based policy, it's going to be for our entire watershed. So they will be consulted as we move forward with the project. And again, that'll be based on the tentative schedule, second quarter, third quarter, as part of the overall public consultation. But we will be basing our policy review on best science practices, as well as comparing with what other conservation authorities are doing.
Member Brady? No, we're done. Thank you. Okay, so again, it's moved by Member Metcalf and seconded by Member Shurton. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I keep looking at, I got to put it on my chat line. Member Clark, my apologies.
I wasn't going to comment. I was just going to support the motion because I agree with the motion. But the comment that we've been fiddling around the edges while the heart is burning, are you kidding me? We have addressed serious governance and structural issues on accountability and integrity, on the development of policies. We have been working our butts off since we were appointed to this committee. I'm not sure how much more we could do than what we've already accomplished. And then I'm hearing board members saying that we haven't done enough. And they're on the board. Our staff is, I chaired the governance committee when we first started that committee. We were going systematically through policies line by line to correct those policies, to make the organization more transparent, more accountable, to put integrity back into the system. We have been systematically going through these policies with our staff. It didn't happen fast enough? Well, I'm sorry. We only have so many people to do the work. Yes, we're getting to it now. And I think it's good that we're getting to it now. But I'm sorry, I cannot accept the judgment that we've been fiddling around the edges while the heart is burning. That is a complete disservice to the members of this board, the members that served on the previous board who were unappointed and citizen members were appointed in their place, the citizen members who have worked on this board, and all of our staff. We're not moving fast enough for you? Wow. Have you really looked at our finances to understand what the resource implications are? We're not Toronto Conservation Authority. We don't have an unlimited budget to do these things. We're doing it in a prudent, fiscally responsible manner to get these things done. And in the midst of this, now we have to also include all of the provincial planning changes that they've now inflicted upon us, which will be a part of this document. So I'm sorry, I disagree with the statement that we haven't gone fast enough. I think this board has done an excellent job. I think the citizen members and the elected members have worked well together. They've tackled problems that were inherent issues, from my understanding, long before I was appointed to this board. And not one of the board members around this table shied away from tackling those issues. And we made some really serious decisions that have broad implications for the future. And now we're being heralded, even the chairman of the Niagara region heralded how far we have come in setting policies on accountability, transparency, good governance. I dispute the assertion. I'm glad we're moving forward. Let's just start working together as a team and coalesce and make sure that we can get things done as quickly as possible. But we have to work within the limitations of the resources that we have. We can't hire unlimited staff to do this work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I notice that Member Smith would like to make a comment. Can we please wrap this up, Member Smith? Quickly and respectfully.
I'm not sure what that comment implies, Chair.
I meant that for everyone, not just you. Sorry.
Thank you. It was this board's decision to defer the Auditor General's observation number 9. It was this board's decision to prioritize the policies that you are putting words in my mouth when you say things like, we don't have unlimited staff, as if I implied that we had unlimited staff and budget. But this board decided what the priorities were for this organization. Auditor General observation number 9, which was on the green policies being too permissive, was deferred and deferred and deferred. That was the decision of this board. That is the heart of what is the Conservation Authority. It was this board that decided not to deal with it till now. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Member Clark, last time. Thank you. Go ahead.
It was this board that prioritized what things were important and what things we needed to do right away. And transparency and accountability were the #1 issues that we heard from residents. We had to fix the code of conduct. We had to fix the integrity process. We had to fix all of those things. Yes, we prioritized, but this board did it as a group. And now we're getting to the next component. That's good governance, my friend. We can't do it all at once.
Thank you. Member Woodhouse, are we going to wrap this up, please? Member Woodhouse?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think it's helpful for us to be lecturing anybody on this board. I don't think it's helpful in terms of building a cohesive group that are working in unison. So I really don't want to hear these kind of discussions around in an open public forum of this. If somebody has an opinion about somebody else, they should be talking to them and not taking all of our time needlessly. I think that the arguments either way, I think between the two individuals have validity in both of them. I think there's a way in which we can solve these things. And while some of us may not be happy with the speed in which things make progress here, others have a good understanding of, in their opinion, as to why it's taken this amount of time. And when you look at the entire report from the ministry, you can see that it was laced with a huge undertaking by the previous board that was put in here to try to get this ship righted. And I think they did a yeoman's job. And I think that those of us who came on later are doing a yeoman's job as well. So I don't think it's helpful. I think that if we can just put our personal feelings aside and just stick to the issues. And with that, I'll close, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And again, I'm going to stick with my comments. This was a very transitional year last year in 2019. And to remind everybody, we didn't even have a permanent CAO at the time. So our CAO was hired at the end of last year, and things are starting to move even faster today. And I'm quite proud of what we've done. CAO Sharma, you have one more comment before we approve this and move on, please.
I'm respectful of members' time and the healthy debate, but I think I should comment on this on behalf of staff. I want the members to clearly understand that the policies we are using right now, there are no holes in the policy. I think when Thundering Water Development came to the board in February, David did a presentation comparing our policies to other conservation authorities. So I want you all to be very clear that our staff are doing a very professional job. We're not making decisions based on major gaps or holes. We're doing our best. There's always room for improvement all the time. New things happen, new science comes in, and we can make things better. What we don't have, I agree, is a procedural manual, is as a publicly vetted and for transparency purposes as to how we make decisions. And everybody, the developers, the public, the proponent, the board members, everybody has a right to know how decisions are made, what guidelines are being used. So there are several of those things that we can put in place to make things better. But having come from another conservation authority, I can tell you it's all in the interpretation. And I do not want members to go away from this discussion thinking, and the public, that we are using some wrong policy or that our staff are not making the right decisions. In my 1 year here, I think staff have made very sound professional decisions, and I'm 100% supportive of that. Please note that.
Thank you, CAO Sharma. Well said. Okay, folks, Member Metcalf and seconded by Member Shurton. I don't know if Member Metcalf is still with us. Oh, I see his screen there, but I don't see him there. So I'm going to switch this over to Member Shurton.
I have a face for radio, so you don't need to look.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Member Metcalf, seconded by Member Shurton, who's back with us. And any opposed? Seeing none, we're now on to committee minutes, please. Finance Committee. So minutes of the Finance Committee, this is dated September 17th. This is just to receive, folks, and then we're going to go to certain reports within that committee minutes to be approved. So it is moved by Member Bylsma, seconded by Member Brady, that we receive these minutes. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. So part of this, the minutes is report number FA 6720. This is the draft reserves policy for approval. I'm going to ask Lise Gagnon to be prepared to answer any questions, and then maybe Chair Kawal would also like to add any comments after. So it is moved by Member Beatty, seconded by Member Clark. Are there any questions or concerns about the reserves policy? Member Foster, please.
Got to find my unmute. I just, reserves were a bit of a topic of discussion at Niagara Region when CAO Sharma was presenting to the NPCA budget and stuff like that. So just is any of this, and this is true to the CAO, are there any concerns coming out of the Niagara Region meeting and our policies that we're looking at here? I doubt it, but I'm just wondering.
Through you, Madam Chair, I haven't heard of any concerns or anything about that.
Member Foster?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by Member Beatty, seconded by Member Clark. Any opposition? And when we're finished this, folks, when we get down to the Public Advisory Committee minutes, we will be asking for the new member appointment under confidential. So sorry, I know it's under 8E, but and I missed over it, and I apologize. Unless you want to go back to 8E and approve that appointment now. Can we do that? Okay. So just to give you a heads up, this is confidential. If you have any concerns or questions, we have to go in camera. If not, we can approve the three new members in open session. Are there any concerns and questions on the three appointees for the PAC? Seeing none, so it's moved by Member Kuhn-Peterson, seconded by Member Cridlin to appoint these members with the Public Advisory Committee. Thank you. It's carried, and my apologies for that, folks. I have my working notes under a different document, and I didn't have that there. So sorry, we're going back to Finance Committee, please. One more report, number FA 6820. This is the draft tangible capital assets policy for approval. Lise Gagnon, who is the Director of Finances, our Director of Corporate Services, is here to answer any questions for you. Seeing none. Member Kawal, you're being the chair of the Finance Committee. Do you have any additional comments before we wrap up the Finance Committee?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So the concept of both reserves and tangible capital assets are not new. These are current practices that we've been following for several years. However, what we've been missing is the policy piece. And under the responsibility delegated by the board to the Finance Committee to help put in place adequate controls to safeguard the authority's assets, we've been bringing forward these two new policies to you. I just want to comment that the committee was very pleased with the comprehensiveness of both of the policies and the tremendous amount of work that Director Gagnon and her team had put into developing them. She indicated in that process that there are only a couple of conservation authorities that actually have reserves policies, and that she had to look across a broad range of other public sector organizations to help pull all of this together. So again, the committee is, I think, very pleased with the comprehensiveness and the completeness of the policies that are in front of you. I would maybe just ask Director Gagnon to just explain the next steps beyond the approval of these policies, because this may provide the link to what Member Foster was asking about the actual financial reserves. Director Gagnon?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the tangible capital assets policy, next steps, this policy will provide the framework to allow us to take full advantage of the asset management software that we've recently implemented, and provide the structure that we need to be able to report in a more fulsome way, and to manage our asset base in accordance with the policy. When it comes to the reserves policy, next steps are to determine, so the structure is in place now in terms of how to add to the reserves. The land securement reserve in particular was discussed recently at length in as far as what the schedule going forward will be to increase the reserve, as well as this policy will work and dovetail with the land acquisition strategy in order to give us the financial resources to move forward with the land acquisition strategy. So discussions are continuing with our municipal partners on the various reserves. It was brought forward at a regional council recently with Niagara, and finance staff with Hamilton have been consulted as well. So we're at the consultation process now with all of our municipal partners, and we'll be coming back to the board with recommendations going forward once those discussions take place.
Thank you, Member K-Wall.
Thank you, Chair. That was it.
Thank you. And again, it's been moved by Member Kuhn-Peterson and seconded by Member Cridlin that we approve the draft tangible capital assets policy. Any in opposition, please? And can I just gently remind everyone, if you're getting up from your chair to leave the room, can you please shut your video off? That would be really helpful. It helps me to find out who's in the room and who is not. So now we're on to the Public Advisory Committee. 9.2.1. This is the minutes of the Public Advisory Committee meeting dated November 26, 2020. This is just to receive. I have Member Fiore and Member Foster, seconded by Member Foster. Are there any opposition to receiving those minutes? Any corrections, comments? Thank you. It's approved. And here's where we should have had the new members. Sorry, folks. So now we're on to the minutes of the Watershed Floodplain Advisory Subcommittee dated November 26, 2020. I believe the Vice Chair, Mackenzie, would like to make a comment about the public information centers regarding the Watershed Floodplain. Vice Chair Mackenzie?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I had the pleasure last night of being an observer or participant with the WebEx meeting for the floodplain study for Grimsby, and I understand the night before there was a floodplain study WebEx public participation meeting with for the town of Lincoln, with a total of 60 participants for those two open houses. And if I am very, very pleased with the professionalism of how staff and the moderator presented the work, the type of work that the NPCA does. And so my compliments to Steve Miller, Dave DeLuce, and other staff who may have been involved with putting this program together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. That's good to hear. So, no opposition to the Watershed Floodplain Advisory. It is moved by Member Halenga, seconded by Member Houston. I don't see Member Halenga. I'm assuming he's here. I'm just going to wait to hear an A or a nay from Member Halenga.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So, are there any oppositions to receiving those minutes? There he is. Thank you very much. It's been moved. So now we are into notice of motion, and I understand that Vice Chair Mackenzie, would you like to share your notice of motion for next meeting, please?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I title this Improvements to NPCA Passive Conservation Areas. Whereas the NPCA has passive non-revenue generating conservation areas located across the entire watershed, whereas the increase in attendance at all conservation areas has been significant in 2020, whereas the visiting public has shown a strong need to visit our areas for recreational use for their mental and physical health, and whereas conservation areas are in need of visitor service improvements, including signage, trails, visitor facilities, and parking. Be it resolved that staff bring forward a report with a 5-year plan illustrating the needs on a priority basis, proposed improvements to the passive conservation areas in the NPCA watershed. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will stay as a notice of motion, and everybody will get a copy of that for our next package and to be introduced for as a motion. Now we're on to any other notices of motion before we go on to new business. Seeing none. Thank you. We're on to new business now. I can call on Member Smith. I know you would like to introduce some new business. Well, actually, it's good business. It's just under a new section here. Member Smith.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. And I'm not sure, because I see that there's going to be a verbal update from the CAO. So maybe she was going to if Madam CAO, if you were going to cover that about the Endangered Species Act, then I don't need to speak. I just wanted to bring up the opportunity for comment on that.
CAO Sharma, were you planning on speaking on that at the next item? Okay. Shaking her head, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Member Smith. And I'd like to go to Member Foster, please. Do you have an update for us from the foundation?
I have, well, I can update the foundation, but I do have another business as well. And this is just a question back in and through to staff. I've kind of witnessed firsthand some fairly significant damage that's been done to Long Beach Conservation Area when the storms and stuff came through. I'm just wondering, are staff going to produce some sort of a list of what we're seeing and perhaps some of the costs that we're looking at in the short term to go and resolve some of the problems that are going on? You know, these are really important areas that we have. So anyway, just a question either to CAO Sharma or to Adam. So thank you.
Thank you. I know CAO Sharma has the answers, but I'm sure she's going to direct this to Adam Christie. Go ahead, CAO Sharma. You're going to send it to Adam. Thank you. Adam Christie, Director of Operations, Senior Manager of Operations, sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair, appreciate the feedback. We've initiated a insurance claim for the damage that happened on November 15th. So that has been initiated. I'm actually meeting there on Tuesday with them to go over it. And there's also been a meeting scheduled in the new year to look at proactive solutions to the walls surrounding the conservation area. So thank you for the question. And
thank you. Member Foster?
Yes, thank you very much. That's great. Again, Long Beach and some of the rest are diamonds that we have, and we want to make sure we're on top of all of this stuff. So thank you, Adam.
Before you go to the foundation, Member Houston had a question. Is this about the Long Beach, Member Houston? If not, we'll go back to Member Foster.
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you. Member Foster, go ahead. My apologies.
Sure. And just with regards to the foundation, again, more progress has been made. And I just want to thank the joint venture with the NPCA on the celebration of lights, the holiday trail at Falls Falls. I had the opportunity to speak on behalf of Chair Johnson at that event, along with the foundation and various dignitaries, including Chair Bradley and Mayor Easton out of the town of Lincoln. This is a great first step, and I want to thank Adam and his team for putting that together. And this is a great start. So, and from a foundation point of view, again, a starting point for us as we're moving into the future. So, thank you very much, Chair Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on that file. We're going back to Member Houston, please. Question.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I just had a question regarding the St. John's property because I've been there recently and there was quite a few trees that have been cut down. I'm wondering, I'm just wondering why there's so many trees down.
So either CAO Sharma or Director Christie?
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Those were all trees that were directed by our forester that needed to come down for trails, health and safety of the trails.
Oh, okay, because they weren't obstructing the trails in any way, but they were off to the side. But I was really taken by how many trees were down. So are you saying that most of the trees were compromised?
Unfortunately, a lot of our conservation areas have been affected by this. It's mostly ash trees that have either come down naturally through wind or storms, or that we've taken down to prevent health and safety of our trails.
And when we do that, do we also replant to replace the canopy?
We look at that. Naturalization is what our preferred uses that it will generate on its own. But there are times such as we look at our conservation areas, for example, 2 Mile Creek Conservation Area, our staff have noticed that it's not naturalizing like we had hoped. So we look at additional restoration efforts.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we're finished with new business. CAO Sharma, do you have a verbal update other than the Bill 29229 that we just covered?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, there's a few things that I would like to highlight other than Bill 229, but it's keeping us busy. And there are some good news stories that I would like to share with the board members. So let me start by thanking the board member. It's been a year since I've been here, almost, and I have no idea where the year went by. We've accomplished a lot. And I know it's easy to look good when you have very good people working around you. So thank you to staff for doing an amazing job this year. Thank you to board members. I am actually so impressed with the passion and a level of knowledge that the board brings. And I have called you each individually on various subjects and sought your opinions and advice. I really feel fortunate that I have this group of members to work with. So I think we should all be very proud of ourselves. I will be doing a full presentation at the January meeting about our accomplishments this year and where we are going in 2021. But we have our work cut out, I know already. Let me just share a few good news items. Member Foster spoke about the holiday trail at Balls Falls. This was the first year we tried this winter programming, and I'm really proud to report that staff have done such a good job. We are maxed out at full participation, full booking, and we are socially distancing these booking and $30,000 of revenue from this pilot project. So I want to say that I think this has a lot of potential, and we will be exploring with staff what to do about this going forward in future. I should also say and commend NPCA staff that this year they have decided not to host their Christmas party. Instead, we are donating to various charities, and that's very generous of NPCA staff. Can you please give them a virtual round of applause? Please unmute yourself. Yes.
Good for them.
It's very, very important. So thank you to all of our staff. Going on to Conservation Authority parks. In the winter time, as of Monday, they will be closed but open for passive use by community. We'll leave the parking lots open and we will clean snow as needed if it gets too much of a safety issue. So Adam's team will be around to do that. We're also monitoring parks over the holidays to make sure if there are any issues or complaints that can be directed to the right staff. But I just wanted board members to know that actively the parks will be closed for the next 2 weeks. Endangered Species Act, it's been posted on for public comments by the province. It was brought to our attention. We communicated with Conservation Ontario. It has been confirmed that Conservation Ontario is commenting on that. Generally, NPCA staff provide comments to Conservation Ontario, and they all get collated and submitted on behalf of Conservation Ontario. And then we share those with our members. However, conservation authorities are also, they can also comment directly on that. Chair of the Public Advisory Committee also brought this to my attention. Unfortunately, the deadline is 19th, which is in 2 days or 1 day. So I will be working with staff to review Conservation Ontario comments, add any NPCA specific information this afternoon and tomorrow. And we are hoping that we can send some comments, submit some comments on behalf of the board. And Chair Johnson will be, it will go under your letterhead if you are okay with that. So that was my third one, and I think I had one more. That's it. Thank you.
That's it. And CAO Sharma, I believe you were also going to send that link for commenting to all the board members, because individuals can also comment. It doesn't have to be just from organizations. Member Smith, I know you wanted to comment on that. Are you satisfied, or would you like to add more?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
All righty, super. All right, so my comments, even though it's not on the agenda, just want to let everyone know that both CAO Sharma and myself have been presenting to different municipalities about the NPCA and spreading the good news that we've been doing. Thank you to all the members who have set up your municipality to meet with us. Feel free to contact us if you haven't been able to do that. We'd love to get into more and more of the council chambers. It's been really positive overall. Also want to thank all the municipalities who have jumped on the bandwagon with us about the Bill 229 Schedule 6. We've had several of the municipalities actually reach right out directly to the province, the region of Niagara, City of Hamilton. We also had support from the City of Port Colborne and St. Catharines, Thorold, Welland, the town of Fort Erie, town of Grimsby, Lincoln, Niagara-on-the-Lake, West Lincoln, Wainfleet. Also from the local MPP, Jeff Bursch, from the Niagara Center. So I can't thank you enough. I think our municipality partnerships, et cetera, have been enforced. They've been reinforced, and it's been nice to see some of that support and feedback coming back, positive feedback come back. So we're now on to closed session. We have not needed to go into closed session because you passed both of those lists and the minutes from the previous closed session on November the 19th. So before we adjourn, I just want to remind the people that are on the Strategic Planning Committee to please stay online for our next meeting. For the rest of you, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and let's hope 2021 is better. Can't get worse. And Member Woodhouse, I see you wanted to speak up as well.
Yes, I too wanted to wish everybody the very best of the new year. It's got to be better than the last one. I'd just like to say, Mayor Steele hasn't said anything today. That's 3 hours. So I want it noted in the minutes that I'm sure it's okay. I just worried there for that. Thank you.
No. All his Sudoku puzzles are done.
Well, I spoke twice. I said I was here twice, so.
And Member Kuhn Peterson, we haven't seen you.
They're meant to be said, but anyways, thank you, Member Woodhouse.
No, that's wonderful. Again, folks, have a very safe and healthy holiday and take care. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with you in 2020 under these circumstances. Goodbye, everyone.
Merry Christmas.